Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with jazz drummer and leader Josh Feldstein of the Verve Jazz Ensemble on the 2023 CD called All In. It's their 8th album together and has a very defined mid-20th century Americana kind of vibe. This 10-track album includes arrangements and compositions that are fresh yet comfortably familiar. The VJE is a regular on Neon Jazz and they always deliver, full of energy and jazz that makes the world move. Dig this interview and the new work.
Josh, what's up, man?
Good to hear your voice, Joe. What's happening?
Oh, man, Kansas City's a happy place today.
It's a happy place. You guys have done the impossible. Congratulations. It's a proud moment, and I hope that you enjoy your celebration. It's well-deserved.
Josh, thank you for taking a minute out. It's wonderful to see that new music is out there, and I think this is our third or fourth interview, so it's always good to catch up with you.
Thank you, Joe. It's great to be with you. Thank you so much for having us, and we're very, very excited to share with you and your listeners at Neon Jazz all about All In by the Verve Jazz Ensemble.
Which sounds appropriate, All In. I think that's where we're at right now, as we kind of get to a point where the world's opening up. We're all in. Hopefully warm weather is coming up. Shows are kicking in. So I guess what is the overall feeling of putting this music out at this particular time?
This was the first studio recording the band had done in 3 years. And boy, was it great to get back in the studio. We did a number of really exciting interview videos, which your listeners can check out on our website. Tatum Greenblatt, our trumpet, was the executive producer for the All In project. He's interviewed, I'm interviewed, and Willie Applewhite, our trombonist and arranger, and John Blank, our tenor saxophonist arranger, is also interviewed. We had a chance as our full septet to get back in action, and that includes our fabulous alto saxophonist, flutist Alexa Tarantino, and the rhythm section of Matt Ostreicher on piano, and of course Elias Bailey on bass. And we had a chance to do 10 songs on this album, Joe, and 8 of them were some really interesting music from mid-century Americana, which was really the theme of the All In album. We had 2 originals that were written by Tatum Greenblatt, which I'll talk about. But the focus of the album was mid-century Americana music, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we get into things.
So, yeah, and that's the thing. It's always so evident about what you guys do. Your sound is so full. It's so... There's so much bravado and soul that goes through this. So talk to me a little bit about why you picked that particular genre to go after. Why was it this sound right now?
Great question. I think the answer is that, as you know, the roots of the Verve Jazz Ensemble sort of sits in the hard bop era. And that comes out of the late 50s. And what we really enjoy doing is finding music within the hard bop, bebop, swing, and a little bit more contemporary time zone to identify melodies that we really feel are beautiful. Many of them are underappreciated, what we'll call side B classics. We have a number of them on this particular album. And we just felt that the mid-century time frame gave us access to a lot of music this particular time that we wanted to focus on. So, for example, we have an absolutely gorgeous tune from George Shearing entitled Midnight in the Air. And I came across this particular song quite by accident, Joe. I found it on YouTube. I think it was a 2-minute and 10-second little vignette, little thing that he had recorded on an album, late 50s. And I just loved the melody. And I called Tatum, and I said, we've got to do something with this. And he gave it to Willie Applewhite, our trombonist, and we put together a beautiful, beautiful arrangement of it. We have a big band reduction that we did from the great Toshiko Akiyoshi, from the Toshiko Akiyoshi Lou Tabakin big band that I think was recorded in the late 70s, a tune called Studio J. And little did I know that Toshiko apparently studied, of course, in Boston, where she had taken some musical training. And when she was in Boston, I think the room that she used was Studio J. And so when she wrote this particular composition, she referred back to that. We picked something from this, I think most people are going to recognize, regardless of how old they are, the Odd Couple theme. And it's a very, very notable theme. Why did we pick that? Written by the great Neil Hefti. Of course, he did so much work with the Basie Orchestra. And not only did Neil Hefti write the theme to The Odd Couple, he wrote other television shows that I think most people know, like the theme to Batman. And people don't realize that was written by Neil Hefti. So we focused on that. And, of course, if we're going to do a Hefti a tribute, we had to pull something from the Basie book, and we pulled the amazing ballad, Pensive Miss. Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful melody. And so those are just a handful of the mid-century Americana tunes that we picked from, but they really covered a very broad palette of sound. And by the way, when we did the rendition of the theme to The Odd Couple, we didn't play it straight ahead. We played it as a 6/8 Afro-Cuban thing. And there is some straight-ahead sections in it, but we really had fun with it. It was meant to be playful, but we really kind of got off in this very, very funky kind of an Afro-Cuban thing. And so we took it in a direction that I don't think The Odd Couple originally anticipated.
You know, what's interesting about you guys as a group, and every time I talk to you, is that, you know, there's almost a level of you all that you evolve, but there's this timelessness because you maintain this power as a group. And I'm curious, with what we've all lived through the last 3 years or so now, how has that changed your bond as a band, or how has it affected your sound? Like you just described this song of kind of putting your different spin on it. Is there more risk-taking? Are there other things that are going on that's a little different pre-pandemic? How is that working for you guys?
Well, All In is the eighth album by the VJE in the last 10 years, Joe. And we really have formed a brotherhood, sisterhood among our musicians at this point, in which we really, really understand each other's strengths as musicians. The arrangements lean into a space that we all very, very much enjoy. Everybody in their own right is very deeply steeped in the hard bop idiom. And while we've all played with more quote unquote contemporary oriented groups and have played in things that are going to be a little bit more what we'll call, contemporary, our roots are to take all of that contemporary inspiration and blend it with beautiful melodies that are timeless, to your point, looking for melodies that both very seasoned jazz aficionados can appreciate, but also our goal as a group is to expand the listenability of instrumental jazz. We firmly believe that if the instrumental jazz idiom with a very clearly defined groove and beautiful melodies can be brought forward, that there are millions and millions of listeners that will really enjoy the sound of this music, but they just simply don't have access to it. And we want to do everything we can to try to broaden the base of the instrumental jazz listenership, because we think that there's a lot of ears out there that are going to really want to hear this stuff. So it's with that in mind that all of the musicians in the band come together. We have a very, very common perception in terms of what we're trying to create musically, creatively, inspirationally. We all love and believe in the music and the art form that we are so passionate about. And those are some of the ingredients that lead to the music that we create.
So it's interesting you mentioned, getting more people to listen to this, and it makes me think about the youth more than anything else. And it's interesting because I remember during the pandemic, Bobby Watson had an outdoor show. We had these things called Plex Pods. They were essentially parking lots, and everybody was safely spaced. Pop up the back of your car, and they would go. And I remember I had a Downbeat shirt on, and I was walking over, and this guy stopped me, and he looked like he, was looking for a country music show. And he kind of looked over and said, "What's Verve or what's Downbeat mean?" And I thought he was jacking with me. And I kind of looked over and I said, "It's a magazine. It's kind of the Bible of the jazz world." And we started talking. And as we started talking, he was at that show because he started listening to radio with his 16-year-old daughter who was there over the pandemic. And they heard about this show and they just started getting into jazz. And it was actually quite fascinating to see how that worked because people kind of reverted back to audio. There was podcasting exploded, music exploded in a different way. So I guess that's where I'm at right now. I'm wondering if over this time people have expanded their vernacular, so to speak, and maybe you will have more listeners, or how will you exactly do that? How do you think that would transpire?
What I'm discovering is it's not that complicated. It's simply a matter of, you have kids, I have kids. If you want kids to try a new food, you need to kind of leave it out there. And eventually they nibble. They'll try a little bit. They taste it. And if they're hungry enough, they'll eat it. They may not listen to it the first 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 times you put music in front of them. But eventually people start hearing certain things that are interesting. And sometimes they are immediately drawn to it. It really varies. So sometimes we find people, for example, my daughter is 17. And she and her friends are certainly very much into the pop scene. And they're listening to all kinds of music that, obviously you and I are not talking about today. But when she and her friends hear the VJE's new album, they all love it. They love the music. They find it interesting. It's inspiring. They think it's exciting. And it's a completely different sound. So what I have found is that if we sort of resolve on beautiful melodies, rhythmic structures that people can really find, the one, and they can tap their foot to or snap their fingers to or feel energized by or play in the background and really enjoy. What happens eventually is that there is a deepening of awareness relative to the enjoyment, the satisfaction emotionally of the music. Remember, Joe, that what was the original purpose, if you will, of jazz back in the day, the 1930s? It was dance music. It was contemporary pop music of that era. And the bands played so people could dance. That was what led to the big band era, dance bands and so forth. And so what we want to do is create music that can create or recreate that kind of support in terms of people's enjoyment in the world. And so our mission, if you will, is sort of harkens back to the roots of jazz, which is as a popular source of music that people could dance to and or really just hang out and enjoy. And what we've seen is that with younger audiences, when they're exposed to it, they do just that. Now, that's not to say that you have to have a degree in music to understand jazz. You don't. But let's be honest, a lot of jazz over the course of the last 40 years, 50 years, has gotten intellectual. It's gotten far more complex. The sophistication of soloing, the time signatures have gotten more demanding and so on. And so the number of listeners who are going to have that degree of appreciation have dropped off. We want to try to get back to a more of a inclusive approach to the music, where a person's listening skills don't need to be that refined to be able to really enjoy it. And if they happen to have a highly refined aficionado kind of a jazz background, I'd like to think that the playing that we bring to the table will satisfy those listeners too. So we're trying to really approach both audiences, if you will, at the same time.
So speaking of that, bringing the music to everybody, I want to know, if anyone out there wants to see you all live, they want to pick up All In, where is the best place for them to go to do that? Right
now, the album is going to be released publicly, I think it's May 26th, and it will be available on all of the major streaming outlets, Spotify and the like. As far as our performing schedule for 23, we're in the process of putting it together now. We just had a fabulous show in Memphis, Tennessee at the Germantown Performing Arts Center. We look forward to adding a number of really exciting national venues to our schedule this coming year. And people can absolutely send us contacts on our website to be put on our email list, and we will reach out to everybody with regard to both the availability of our music, which is coming soon, as well as to be put on our list for live performances nationally.
So as a performer, do the crowds feel different now with everything returning?
It's a really interesting question. Our recent performance in Memphis, we performed to a sold-out, very jazz-savvy audience. And the connection that we had to our audience was fabulous. They were into everything that we played. The interest, the connectivity, their alignment with the solos, with the swells of the energy of the various songs. From my perspective, Joe, people were so happy to get back into the thrust of real music in a live environment. They loved it, and we loved it. I mean, we just fed off each other. The banter on the stage between the band and the audience was classic. There was a lot of laughter. There was a tremendous amount of connection. So if that's any indication, I'd say that people are ready to reconnect on many levels musically at this point.
And I'm witnessing that myself, and I got to say, watching this whole thing kind of unfold from my end of the microphone this whole time, it's so good to see that musicians not only are putting out their albums, but they're having the chance to back it all up live, because at the end of the day, this jazz medium really means a lot live. It really conveys something in a way that an album won't. So it's all good that those are like two separate components that are now coming back together and complementing each other.
I agree completely. The difference between putting together an album and playing live is really vast. From the perspective of producing a recorded work, the amount of preparation and the discipline, the focus, the pressure, the musicians are trying to play music that's going to be clean, clear, inspired, and very, very much on point. I remember a comment, I think it was Red Garland, the great Red Garland, who said, I've been listening to my own mistakes on records now for the past 40 years, So you have to understand that as a musician, we're trying from the perspective of creating music that's recorded, you keep that in mind. In the live environment, though, you let it rip. Now you have the opportunity to connect with your audience and to move on an energy wave that, or an emotional wave that allows the musician to take some chances because they really feel that the audience is connected with them. They're feeling it with their bandmates. And a wrong note or two or three doesn't get in the way of a real infusion of energy and vitality and enthusiasm and inspiration. That's fine too. So it's a different kind of an environment. They both lead to hopefully really, really great artistic products. that audiences can enjoy. But they're different, and they're intended to be different.
For sure, and that's the key right there. You guys always deliver artistic quality. Josh, it's always great to catch up with you. Thank you for taking a minute out. Good luck with All In, the return to the world as we know it. And hopefully at some point, man, you guys can get through Kansas City. It'd be great to catch you guys here live.
I hope so, Joe. It would be our pleasure. Thanks very much for having me back on Neon Jazz. It's always great to talk to you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Josh for consistently giving Neon Jazz all of the goods. If you want to hear more interviews, you can find Neon Jazz interviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. You can subscribe. For all things Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.